If Charlie Munger had to summarize human nature in one sentence, it wouldn't be flattering. He believed that most of our biggest mistakes don't come from lack of intelligence, they come from predictable psychological tendencies. In fact, he once gave a famous talk called The Psychology of Human Misjudgment, where he laid out a long list of mental tendencies that quietly sabotage us, not occasionally, constantly. And here's the uncomfortable starting point. Your brain is not built for truth. It's built for survival. That sounds dramatic, but it explains almost everything. For most of human history, speed mattered more than accuracy. If you hesitated too long analyzing whether that shadow was a predator, you didn't survive long enough to refine your reasoning skills. So evolution optimized us for fast reactions, emotional bonding, tribal loyalty, and pattern recognition. Not for rational investing, not for objective thinking, not for statistical reasoning. And those ancient survival settings are still running in the background. Munger's insight wasn't that humans are irrational in random ways. It's that we are irrational in consistent, repeatable patterns, which is actually more dangerous. Take one of his most powerful ideas, incentive-caused bias. He used to say, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." That's not cynicism, that's pattern recognition. People don't just respond to money, they respond to status, approval, fear, belonging, ego. Incentives shape perception itself. If someone is paid to believe something, they are far more likely to believe it. Not because they're evil, because their brain starts filtering reality in a way that protects the reward. This isn't corruption, it's wiring. Another tendency Munger talked about is what he called doubt avoidance. The human brain hates uncertainty. It feels like danger. So when we face ambiguity, we rush to close the case. We grab the first explanation that feels coherent, even if it's weak. That's why conspiracy theories spread. That's why market bubbles inflate. That's why people double down instead of reconsidering. Certainty feels safe, but reality is often messy. Then there's social proof. If everyone around you believes something, your brain lowers its defenses. Agreement becomes evidence. In prehistoric times, going against the tribe was risky, so conformity increased survival. Today, it increases stock market bubbles. If enough people are buying, it must be right. If enough people are panicking, it must be dangerous. The crowd doesn't just influence your decision, it changes what you see. And here's the subtle part. Most of these tendencies operate below awareness. You don't wake up thinking, "Today I will distort reality to protect my ego." It just happens. Munger also emphasized what he called over-optimism tendency. Humans systematically overestimate positive outcomes for themselves. We assume we're above average. We assume our plan will work. We assume our risks are smaller than they are. It's comforting, but optimism untethered from probability is expensive. Then there's inconsistency avoidance. Once we publicly commit to something, our brain resists changing course, not because the facts haven't changed, but because we don't want to feel inconsistent. Changing your mind feels like losing status. So people defend bad investments. They defend failing strategies. They defend opinions long after evidence shifts. It's not stupidity, it's self-protection. And here's something Munger understood deeply. Intelligence does not immunize you. In some cases, high intelligence makes it worse. Smart people are better at constructing arguments to defend what they already believe. They become skilled lawyers for their own bias. That's terrifying because it means being clever isn't enough. You have to build systems that protect you from yourself. Munger loved checklists. He loved multidisciplinary thinking. He loved slowing down big decisions. Why? Because he assumed his own brain was flawed. That humility is the edge. Most people assume their thoughts are objective. Munger assumed his were distorted and tried to compensate. There's something powerful about that mindset. Instead of asking, "Why am I right?" he often asked, "How could I be wrong?" Instead of chasing excitement, he looked for disconfirming evidence. Instead of chasing excitement, he valued patience. He once joked that it's remarkable how much long-term advantage people like him have gotten simply by trying to be consistently not stupid instead of trying to be very intelligent. That line sounds funny. It's actually deadly serious. Because most human misjudgment isn't dramatic, it's subtle. It's buying because others are buying. It's trusting because someone sounds confident. It's refusing to reconsider because it hurts your pride. It's overreacting to loss because loss feels twice as painful as gain feels good. These are not rare glitches, they are default settings. And once you see that, the game changes. You stop expecting perfect objectivity from yourself. You start building friction into big decisions. You pause before reacting. You question incentives, including your own. You understand that your first instinct is often emotional, your second thought is often self-justification, and true reflection takes effort. That doesn't make you pessimistic, it makes you dangerous, in a good way. Because when you assume bias, you become careful. When you assume distortion, you seek clarity. When you assume you're fallible, you become adaptable. The brain is brilliant. It allowed humans to dominate the planet. It's also biased, tribal, impatient, and reward-driven. Charlie Munger didn't try to eliminate that reality. He studied it, he mapped it, and then he built decision-making habits around it. That's where this module really begins, not with blaming human nature, but with understanding it clearly, calmly, and without illusion. Because once you understand the machinery, you're no longer completely controlled by it. If there's one psychological force Charlie Munger believed people consistently underestimate, it's incentives. He didn't say intelligence explains the world. He didn't say ideology explains the world. He said, "Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome." That line sounds simple, almost obvious. It's not, because incentives don't just influence behavior, they influence perception, they influence judgment, they influence what people genuinely believe to be true. And that's where it gets dangerous. Munger called it reward and punishment super response tendency. The phrase is long, but the idea is brutally clear. Humans over-respond to incentives, not slightly, massively. If you reward a behavior, you get more of it. If you punish a behavior, you get less of it. That's basic psychology. Even animals understand that. But humans add something more complicated, rationalization. When there's a strong reward attached to a certain belief or outcome, people don't just act in that direction, their brains start adjusting reality to match it. Imagine a salesman paid purely on commission. Do you think he evaluates products the same way a neutral observer would? Probably not. But here's the uncomfortable part. He may not even realize he's biased. His brain quietly emphasizes the positives. It downplays the negatives. It builds a story that makes selling feel reasonable, even responsible. He's not necessarily lying, he's adapting. Munger gave examples from business, medicine, law. Everywhere incentives exist. Doctors paid per procedure may unconsciously recommend more procedures. Executives paid based on quarterly earnings may push short-term gains at long-term cost. Consultants hired to validate a decision often validate it. Again, not always maliciously. Incentives bend cognition. And here's the subtle extension. Incentives don't have to be financial. Status is an incentive. Approval is an incentive. Avoiding embarrassment is an incentive. Belonging is an incentive. If your social circle strongly believes something, disagreeing carries a cost. You risk exclusion. You risk tension. You risk looking foolish. So your brain softens its doubts. It adjusts. It aligns. That's not weakness, that's wiring. In prehistoric tribes, being aligned with the group increased survival. Today, it increases conformity. Munger understood that incentives are often invisible because they're baked into systems. You don't notice them the way you notice arguments, but they shape outcomes more reliably than arguments do. Here's a hard truth. People can sincerely believe things that serve their incentives. A CEO whose compensation depends on stock price will naturally see optimistic projections as more credible. An employee whose promotion depends on pleasing a superior will naturally see that superior as more competent. You are not immune to this. That's the part most people miss. We love identifying other people's incentives. We're terrible at identifying our own. If you benefit from a certain conclusion, your brain will treat that conclusion more generously. If admitting you're wrong would damage your ego, your brain will search harder for supporting evidence. If changing course would make you look inconsistent, your mind will reinterpret facts to preserve your image. Incentives don't just move actions, they shape reality as experienced by the person. That's why Munger said this tendency is super response. It's amplified, and it compounds. If a system consistently rewards a distorted outcome, over time, the entire organization bends toward distortion. Think about financial bubbles. As asset prices rise, early participants make money. That success attracts more participants. Analysts upgrade projections. Media coverage turns positive. Everyone's incentives begin aligning around continued growth. Doubt becomes expensive. Skepticism becomes socially costly. So optimism multiplies until reality interrupts. Munger wasn't cynical about human nature. He was realistic. He didn't say people are evil. He said systems matter. If you want ethical behavior, design ethical incentives. If you want long-term thinking, reward long-term results. If you want honest advice, remove the financial pressure that biases it. That sounds obvious, but look around. How many industries reward long-term integrity over short-term performance? Not many. This is why understanding incentives is a survival skill. When evaluating a decision, Munger would often ask, what are the incentives at play here? Who benefits if this works? Who benefits if it doesn't? What is this person rewarded for believing? That question alone can cut through layers of confusion, and you should apply it to yourself. Why do you believe what you believe? Is it because the evidence is strong? Or because the belief feels good? Or because changing it would cost you something? The brutal part of incentive cause bias is this. You can be both sincere and wrong at the same time, because sincerity doesn't cancel distortion. Your brain will protect your reward structure. It always has. So, what do? First, you assume distortion, not in others only, in yourself. Second, you try to align your incentives with long-term outcomes. If you invest, think in years, not weeks. If you build something, reward durability, not applause. If you seek truth, create situations where being wrong doesn't punish you too heavily. And third, when evaluating others, don't start with their words, start with their incentives. It's not about distrust, it's about clarity. Munger believed that understanding incentives explains more about human behavior than IQ ever will, because intelligence doesn't override reward structures, it works inside them. If you truly grasp this tendency, you stop being surprised by scandals, you stop being shocked by corporate failures, you stop assuming that smart people will automatically do the rational thing. You look at the system, you look at what's being rewarded, and you predict behavior from there. That's not cynicism, that's pattern recognition. And once you start seeing incentives clearly, you realize something slightly unsettling. The world makes a lot more sense, and your own decisions become a lot harder to lie to yourself about.
Let's talk about something that feels harmless. Following the crowd. Charlie Munger called it social proof tendency. It sounds technical. It's not. It simply means this. When we're unsure, we look at what other people are doing, and we copy it. That instinct made perfect sense for most of human history. If everyone in your tribe ran, you ran. If everyone avoided certain food, you avoided it. If everyone trusted someone, you probably trusted them too. Going against the group wasn't brave. It was dangerous. So evolution wired us to treat group behavior as evidence. If many people believe something, it must be right. If many people fear something, it must be risky. If many people buy something, it must be valuable. That logic kept small tribes alive. In modern markets, it creates bubbles. Here's the tricky part. Social proof doesn't feel like copying. It feels like independent thinking. You scroll through headlines, you see everyone talking about the same stock, analysts are bullish, your friends are investing, social media is full of success stories. You tell yourself, there must be something here. And maybe there is. But your confidence isn't coming from deep analysis, it's coming from repetition. Repetition creates familiarity. Familiarity creates comfort. Comfort feels like truth. Munger understood that humans are extremely sensitive to social alignment. Agreement reduces internal tension. Disagreement creates friction. And our brains don't like friction. So when enough people lean in one direction, resistance becomes psychologically expensive. Even silence can influence you. If nobody around you questions something, your brain reads that as validation. This is how entire industries drift into collective error. Think about financial manias. During a boom, early success stories dominate the narrative. Prices rise, media attention increases, experts justify the trend, more participants join. At some point, the crowd becomes the argument. People stop asking, is this fundamentally sound? They start asking, why am I not in this yet? And here's the dangerous shift. Missing out feels worse than being wrong. That emotional pressure pushes rational caution aside. Social proof doesn't just affect investors, it affects professionals. If everyone in your company praises a strategy, challenging it requires courage. If everyone in your field adopts a new model, skepticism feels isolating. So most people go along, not because they're incapable of independent thought, because isolation carries psychological cost. Munger believed social proof is especially powerful under uncertainty. When situations are complex, and modern life is extremely complex, we default to imitation. It's efficient. If many smart people are doing something, it saves you the work of figuring it out from scratch. But here's the catch. Groups can be wrong together. And when groups are wrong together, they amplify each other's confidence. Doubt gets filtered out. Skeptics get ignored. Warnings sound negative. Optimism spreads faster because it feels better. This doesn't mean the crowd is always wrong. It means the crowd is not evidence by itself. One of the most uncomfortable investing lessons is this: the best opportunities often feel lonely. When something is obviously attractive, it's usually already priced that way. When something feels socially risky, that's often where mispricing lives. Munger and Buffett didn't build their careers by following excitement. They built them by being comfortable looking wrong for a while. That's psychologically expensive, and most people aren't wired for it. There's another subtle dimension to social proof: identity. We don't just copy behavior, we copy people we identify with. If someone from your background succeeds using a certain strategy, you're more likely to trust it. If someone you admire endorses something, your brain lowers its defenses. Authority blends with social proof, familiarity blends with trust, and suddenly the line between independent reasoning and imitation disappears. This also explains why trends move so fast in the age of algorithms. Online platforms amplify visible popularity. Likes, shares, views, they act as artificial social proof signals. If millions have watched something, your brain assumes value before you press play. If thousands agree with a take, dissent feels risky. Digital environments compress social proof into visible numbers, and numbers feel objective. But popularity measures attention, not truth. Munger's point wasn't that you should reject consensus automatically, it was that you should recognize its pull. When you feel unusually confident because everyone knows this, pause. When you feel anxious because everyone else is doing it, pause. When disagreement makes you uncomfortable, examine that discomfort. Is it intellectual or social? That question alone can separate thinking from conformity. The goal isn't to become contrarian for ego. Blindly opposing the crowd is just inverted social proof. The goal is independence. That means you're willing to agree with the crowd when evidence supports it, and you're willing to stand apart when it doesn't. But you make that choice consciously, not emotionally. Social proof is powerful because it operates quietly. You don't feel manipulated, you feel aligned, and alignment feels safe. But safe and correct are not the same thing. Munger understood that great decision-making often requires tolerating temporary isolation. That's hard. It means you may look foolish before you look smart. It means you may feel early before you feel validated. But if you can recognize the gravitational pull of the crowd, you gain something rare, the ability to choose your position instead of inheriting it. And in markets, in careers, in life, that difference compounds. Because when you stop treating popularity as proof, you start seeing opportunities that others overlook, and you stop getting swept away when enthusiasm turns into excess. That's not rebellion, that's clarity. And clarity in a noisy world is a serious advantage.
There's something more dangerous than being wrong. It's needing to be right. Charlie Munger believed one of the strongest forces inside the human mind is the desire for consistency. Once we take a position, our brain starts defending it, not carefully examining it, defending it. He called this inconsistency avoidance tendency. It sounds mild, it's not. Once you publicly commit to an idea, a decision, an identity, changing your mind becomes psychologically expensive because it's no longer just about facts. It's about ego. It's about pride. It's about how you look. Imagine you invest in a company. You tell your friends it's a great opportunity. You explain your reasoning. You feel smart about it. Then the stock starts dropping. At that moment, two things are happening. One is external, the price is falling. The other is internal, your identity is being challenged. If you sell, you're not just admitting the investment didn't work, you're admitting you were wrong. And the brain hates that feeling. So what does it do? It searches, not for truth, for support. You start looking for articles that confirm your original view. You reinterpret negative news as temporary noise. You downgrade warnings. You highlight minor positives. This is confirmation bias at work. It doesn't feel like self-deception. It feels like balanced research. That's what makes it dangerous. Munger understood that once we're attached to a belief, our intelligence becomes a tool for justification. Smarter people don't escape this. They often do it more elegantly. They construct better arguments. They defend more persuasively. But the underlying motivation hasn't changed. Protect the position. Protect the ego. Protect consistency. There's a deep emotional discomfort in changing your mind. It feels unstable. It feels like weakness. But in reality, clinging to outdated beliefs is often more irrational than revising them. Another related tendency Munger talked about is what we might call reason respecting. Humans crave explanations. When something happens, we demand a cause. If a stock rises, there must be a reason. If a business fails, there must be a narrative. Randomness makes us uneasy. So we create stories, even when the data is thin, even when luck played a large role. Once the story is formed, it becomes sticky. You don't remember the uncertainty, you remember the explanation. That's hindsight bias layered on top of confirmation bias, and now your belief feels reinforced. The brain loves coherence, it hates contradiction. So when evidence challenges your view, your mind experiences friction. To reduce that friction, it can do one of two things: adjust the belief or distort the evidence. Most people choose the second because it's easier. Admitting error requires humility. Distorting evidence requires creativity. Guess which one the ego prefers. This is why public debates rarely change minds. When someone's identity is tied to a belief, presenting counter-evidence can actually strengthen their position. They don't evaluate it neutrally, they defend against it. The brain interprets disagreement as threat, not intellectual threat, social threat, status threat, and our survival wiring kicks in. Munger didn't believe humans could eliminate this tendency. He believed we could design around it. One way is pre-commitment to flexibility. Before making a big decision, ask yourself, under what conditions would I change my mind? Define those conditions in advance, write them down. That way, when evidence shifts, you're not reacting emotionally, you're executing a rule. Another way is actively seeking disconfirming evidence. Instead of asking, why is this a good idea? Ask, how could this fail? Instead of looking for praise, look for criticism. It's uncomfortable, but uncomfort is often a signal that real thinking is happening. There's a quiet strength in saying, I was wrong. It sounds simple, it's rare, and it separates flexible thinkers from stubborn ones. The irony is this: the more tightly you grip an identity, the less adaptable you become. And in complex systems, markets, careers, relationships, adaptability is survival. Munger admired people who could update their beliefs without drama. No theatrics, no ego battles, just new information, revised conclusion. That's intellectual maturity. But it requires something most people resist: detaching your self-worth from your opinions. If your identity depends on being right, you will suffer. If your identity depends on learning, you evolve. Self-deception isn't loud, it's subtle. It's the slight overconfidence, the selective memory, the defensive tone, the refusal to re-examine assumptions. It's not villainous, it's human. And the more certain you feel, the more careful you should be, because extreme certainty often signals emotional attachment, not analytical clarity. The goal isn't to doubt everything endlessly, it's to hold beliefs lightly, to treat opinions as working hypotheses, not permanent declarations, to update when evidence changes, to value accuracy over pride. Munger once implied that avoiding stupidity is often more powerful than chasing brilliance. This is one of those moments. Avoiding self-deception won't make you famous overnight, but it will save you from doubling down on bad decisions. It will keep small mistakes from becoming catastrophic ones. And over decades, that restraint compounds. Because in a world where many people defend positions long after they stop making sense, the ability to calmly say, I need to rethink this, becomes a competitive advantage. It's quiet, but it's powerful. And it starts with recognizing that your mind's greatest blind spot might be the story it's telling about itself. There is a strange asymmetry in human psychology. Winning feels good. Losing feels devastating, and the intensity is not equal. Charlie Munger referred to this as deprival superreaction tendency. It sounds academic, but the idea is simple. We react more strongly to loss than to gain, much more strongly. Behavioral economists later quantified it. Roughly speaking, losing $100 hurts about twice as much as gaining $100 feels good. You don't need a study to know that. You feel it. Think about investing. When a stock goes up 10%, you're pleased, maybe proud. When it drops 10%, you feel tension in your stomach. You check it more often. You replay the decision in your head. You think about selling. The numbers are symmetrical. Your emotional response isn't. Loss triggers something primitive. In evolutionary terms, losing resources could mean losing survival. Food, shelter, status, all were tied to safety. So the brain developed an alarm system around loss. And that alarm system still fires today, even when the loss is just a fluctuating number on a screen. Here's where it gets interesting. Loss doesn't just create pain, it distorts judgment. When facing a potential loss, people become irrationally risk-seeking. That sounds contradictory, but it's observable. Imagine you're down on an investment. Selling locks in the loss. Holding gives you a chance to recover. Rationally, you should evaluate future probabilities. Emotionally, selling feels like accepting defeat, so you hold. Sometimes you double down, not because the fundamentals improved, because you want to erase the pain. The desire to avoid realizing a loss often leads to larger losses. This tendency doesn't only apply to money, it applies to relationships. People stay in failing partnerships because leaving feels like losing the time already invested. It applies to careers. People remain in jobs they dislike because quitting feels like abandoning progress. It applies to arguments. People defend positions long after they stop believing them because conceding feels like status loss. Loss threatens identity, and identity is tightly protected. Munger understood that once humans perceive something as theirs, its psychological value increases. Ownership magnifies attachment. This is sometimes called the endowment effect. The moment something belongs to you, giving it up feels painful, even if you didn't value it as much before owning it. That's why negotiations get emotional. That's why selling assets is harder than buying them. Ownership changes perception. Another layer of this tendency is scarcity. When something is scarce or about to be taken away, desire increases. Limited time offers, last available units, closing soon. Your brain reacts to potential deprivation, not objective value. Scarcity triggers urgency. Urgency reduces rational evaluation. Munger didn't describe this to make people cynical. He described it to make them aware, because once you recognize the distortion, you can pause. When facing a loss, ask yourself, am I evaluating future prospects or trying to avoid emotional discomfort? If this position weren't already mine, would I buy it today? If I hadn't already invested years here, would I start now? Those questions cut through attachment. They reset the frame. The truth is, loss aversion protects us in some contexts. It prevents reckless risk-taking. It keeps us cautious. But in modern financial systems, overreaction to temporary losses can destroy long-term performance. The market fluctuates. Emotions fluctuate with it. People sell at the bottom because pain becomes intolerable. They buy at the top because missing out feels like loss too. That's another twist. Loss isn't only losing what you have, it's also losing what others are gaining. If everyone around you is making money and you're not participating, your brain interprets that as deprivation. You're losing relative status. That emotional discomfort can push you into decisions you'd normally question. So loss aversion connects directly with social proof. They reinforce each other. The crowd is gaining, you're not. It feels like falling behind, and that fear overrides caution. Munger admired investors who could tolerate temporary losses without emotional instability, not because losses are pleasant, but because overreaction is expensive. The ability to detach your ego from short-term outcomes is rare and profitable. There's a simple but difficult mental shift. View losses as information, not identity. A declining investment is data. A mistake is feedback. It's not a verdict on your intelligence. The more personally you take losses, the more distorted your decisions become. Munger often emphasized long time horizons because short-term volatility amplifies emotional response. Zoom out, and many losses shrink. Stay zoomed in, and every fluctuation feels existential. One of the most powerful advantages in investing and in life is emotional stability. Not brilliance, stability. Because if you can endure discomfort without impulsive reaction, you avoid self-inflicted damage. Loss is inevitable. Overreaction is optional. The brain's alarm system will always activate. You can't remove it, but you can observe it. Notice the tightening in your chest. Notice the urge to act immediately. Notice the stories forming in your mind. And then delay. Space between emotion and action is where rationality lives. Munger didn't aim to eliminate fear of loss. He aimed to understand it well enough that it wouldn't control him. Because when loss stops feeling like annihilation and starts feeling like a manageable variable, your decisions improve. And over decades, that emotional discipline compounds. Most catastrophic financial mistakes don't happen because people lack intelligence. They happen because people can't tolerate temporary pain, and pain distorts perception. So the next time something drops in value or an outcome doesn't go your way, pause. Ask whether you're reacting to numbers or to the psychological shock of losing. That distinction is subtle, but mastering it might be one of the most valuable mental upgrades you can make. After studying all these psychological tendencies, you might feel slightly uneasy. Incentives distort us. Crowds pull us. Ego traps us. Loss terrifies us. So what exactly are we supposed to do? Charlie Munger's answer was surprisingly unglamorous. He didn't say, become perfectly rational. He didn't say, eliminate emotion. He said something much simpler. Build systems that protect you from yourself. Because willpower is unreliable. In the heat of the moment, when money's on the line, when reputation is threatened, when everyone else is excited, you will not outthink your wiring. Your wiring is older than your logic. So instead of relying on intelligence, Munger relied on structure. One of his favorite tools was the checklist. That sounds boring. It's not. Pilots use checklists. Surgeons use checklists. Engineers use checklists. Not because they're incompetent, because they're human. Under stress, memory fails, attention narrows, overconfidence creeps in. A checklist forces you to slow down and examine key factors before acting. In investing, that might mean, what are the incentives here? What could go wrong? Am I relying on social proof? What evidence contradicts my view? Am I reacting to short-term loss? You don't trust your mood, you trust the process. That small shift is powerful. Another tool Munger emphasized was inversion. Instead of asking, how do I succeed, ask, how do I fail? Instead of asking, why is this a great opportunity, ask, what could destroy this? The human brain naturally searches for confirming evidence. Inversion forces you to look for disconfirming evidence. It balances your instinct. If you want to ruin your financial future, what would you do? Over-leverage, chase trends, ignore incentives, refuse to admit mistakes, react emotionally to loss. So avoid those. That's not flashy, but over decades, avoiding stupidity is more reliable than chasing brilliance. Munger once joked that it's remarkable how much long-term advantage people have gained simply by trying to be consistently not stupid. That line carries weight, because eliminating big errors often matters more than finding extraordinary opportunities. Another protective habit is delayed reaction. Emotion demands immediacy. Rationality prefers space. When something triggers you, a market crash, a heated argument, a sudden opportunity, your first impulse is rarely your best. Create artificial delay. Sleep on major decisions. Set predefined rules for buying or selling. Remove the ability to act impulsively when you're emotionally charged. Time cools intensity, and cooled intensity improves judgment. Munger also believed in multidisciplinary thinking. If you only view the world through one lens, finance, psychology, engineering, your blind spots multiply. But if you borrow models from multiple disciplines, your perspective widens. Physics teaches you about systems and constraints. Biology teaches you about adaptation and incentives. Psychology teaches you about bias. Economics teaches you about trade-offs. The more mental models you have, the less likely you are to oversimplify. Oversimplification is comforting. Reality is layered. And layered thinking reduces catastrophic error. Another key principle: detach identity from opinion. If your self-worth depends on being right, you will resist updating. If your identity is tied to learning, changing your mind becomes strength. That sounds philosophical. It's practical. Markets change, information evolves, conditions shift. If you can revise without drama, you adapt faster than those protecting ego. Munger admired calmness, not passivity, calmness, because emotional volatility often leads to financial volatility. The ability to remain steady when others are euphoric and when others are panicking creates asymmetry. You don't need to predict every outcome. You need to avoid being swept away. And perhaps the most important habit of all, humility. Not self-doubt, not insecurity, clear-eyed humility about your own cognition. Assume you're biased. Assume you're missing something. Assume your first interpretation might be incomplete. That mindset doesn't paralyze you. It sharpens you. It makes you ask better questions. It makes you check incentives. It makes you test assumptions. It makes you less surprised when reality differs from your expectations. The world is complex. Human psychology is messy. Perfect rationality is fantasy, but disciplined thinking is achievable. Munger didn't try to rewire human nature. He studied it, accepted it, and built guardrails around it. That's the difference. You don't eliminate fear of loss. You prepare for it. You don't eliminate social proof. You recognize when it's influencing you. You don't eliminate ego. You prevent it from steering. Over time, these small protections compound. You avoid major blowups. You make fewer catastrophic errors. You preserve capital, financial and psychological. And preservation over decades becomes power. Because most people aren't defeated by lack of opportunity. They're defeated by unexamined impulses. The real advantage isn't genius, it's self-awareness plus structure. That's not exciting, it doesn't trend, but it works. And if you internalize even a fraction of that discipline, you don't just understand human misjudgment, you operate above it, at least a little more often than before. And in a world where many decisions are made on impulse, a little more often is a serious edge.